Something is seriously wrong with actor Mel Gibson. He appeared on Fox News, and this came in the wake of him appearing on Joe Rogan's podcast, both of which produced concerning moments, conspiratorial moments, and just strange moments. Let's start with this. Laura Ingraham interviewing him about the devastating wildfires taking place in Los Angeles, in the greater Los Angeles area, and Mel Gibson has some theories, or at least he alludes to some theories. While you watch this, if you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button. Here we go.
Well, I know they were messing with the water, letting reserves go for one reason or another. They've been doing that a while. California has a lot of problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things. And then in the events like this, you sort of look, well, is it on purpose? Which, it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be,
Why is it that folks who are conveying conspiracy theories so often match the strange nature of the theory with a strange nature of physical representation, eye movement, etc.? It's really, really interesting. It's like Gibson here is playing the part of someone who's a little bit lacking of marbles.
I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know.
Well, Mel, there's already talk, and we played a couple of sound bites of reimagining the way rebuilding occurs. And obviously there's a great need for high-density housing in California and across the country. That's a big push by the climate folks. And you're already hearing rumblings of that. In this case, like goodbye single-family homes, hello high-density housing.
Yeah. It's pretty scary, and it'll take decades to do that too. It's like even if it if it's a good idea, which I don't know if it is, but reminds me of the old cattle barons clearing people off the land, But I don't know. I can make all kinds of horrible theories up in my head, conspiracy theories and everything else, but
at least he admits it.
It just seemed a little convenient that there was no water, and and that the wind conditions were right, and that there are people ready and willing and able to start fires. And are they commissioned to do so, or are they just acting on their own volition? I don't know. But they seem pretty well equipped, some of these people that they're catching.
A lot of questions. A lot of questions, Mel. Mel, a message tonight.
Yeah, I'll sift through the remains of my place and see if I can find any clues for you.
Yeah, a lot of questions. I think a lot of them are directed toward Mel. What's going on, bruh? What's happening? But this is how they roll, right? Whenever it's easier to conspiracy theories, and it's so easy, you just sort of concoct whatever movie narrative would be most interesting, and you can just kind of run with it. It is so easy. We're going to be talking more about this in other segments, but it is statistically the case that falsehoods travel faster and get more reach on social media than truthful posts do. And so stuff like this, it's so sexy and salacious for people. And they eat it up with no evidence. Like, isn't it suspicious the wind conditions were such that these wildfires would be particularly bad? What do you mean suspicious? How could we? Newsom had a really big fan, and he was doing this for affordable housing reasons or something. Scary, scary stuff. And before continuing on to the wildfire discussion, let's just check in on this clip with Mel Gibson, where the person I'd go to for information on evolution would be Mel Gibson, obviously. And so on Rogan, he was asked about it and gave an informative take.
What are your thoughts on evolution?
Wow. The Darwin thing?
Yeah.
I don't really go for it.
No?
Yeah. Ice Age, dinosaurs, What did they turn into? I mean, things became extinct at some point. I don't think I was some kind of like, legless thing that crawled out of the ocean. I don't think I came from that. I think I was created.
And how do you think you were created? Presumably, there were different states that led to you being created to be what you are. That always confuses me when evolution deniers or truthers or whatever you describe them as cite how special they are or how they were God's creation as proof against evolution. Why couldn't evolution be the process by which you special butterfly was designed? I'm serious. Couldn't that just be God's design that ultimately got to you and then maybe something even more advanced in the future? No, because Mel didn't come from, what do you say, Legolas something? Now, what Mel is kind of referring to, alluding to, what he's getting in the first clip, some of this information from, is just the rampant disinformation that's spreading. Someone called Hustle Bitch put out a post acting like he's some news person. Breaking: Gavin Newsom working with developers to change zoning in burn areas to allow mass apartments. Newsom is allegedly working with developers to convert zoning in Pacific Palisades from R1 single family to R3 apartments. Connect the dots. And then it shows a photograph of a destroyed section of land and buildings. And the community notes had to specify Governor Newsom has said this claim is not true, and Gavin Newsom specified it's not true, but people run with it anyways. Because instead of focusing on what should be the focus, which is an effective response, and currently, but definitely in the future, a retrospective analysis of how this could have been prevented, if it could have, and how the response could have been better. All of that's on the table. And then getting the help to people who need it. It can't ever be that. It always has to be, what's the way I could go viral with a crazy claim of some conspiracy orchestrated by Gavin Newsom to change the zoning of a section of land? Newsom's having to put so much effort instead of the only stuff that should be his focus, what I mentioned before, a lot of effort into just making sure citizens are informed and not being misled by some of these online narratives. He says a lot of misinformation out there. Just launched a new site to ensure the public has access to fact-based data around the southern CA wildfires. The truth: California did not cut our firefighting budget. We have nearly doubled the size of our firefighting army and built the world's largest aerial firefighting fleet. California has increased force management tenfold since we took office, and California will not allow for looting. And there are all these really specific budgetary things that we've talked about a little bit and that are spreading around. Sometimes it takes a second to decipher what the disconnect is, but zooming out, it is the case for sure that the state and local firefighting budgets over the course of the last few years have been increasing and increasing. So if you hear that general claim, that would be wrong. But I do want to give, because I respect the voice of the LA fire chief, who's right now in the midst of it, saying that the city of LA didn't give her the support that she needs and her department the support they need. And then we'll respond.
I want to be very, very clear. Yes, we took a $17 million budget cut. And as we know, any budget cut would negatively impact our ability to carry out our mission. I want to also clarify that I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. It's my job as the fire chief of the Los Angeles City Fire Department to make sure that our firefighters have exactly what they need to do their jobs. And that's why I'm talking to you today. The Palisades fire, everybody's seen it. It is absolutely one of the most horrific natural disasters in the history of Los Angeles. And even with an additional 100 engines, I tell you, we were not going to catch that fire. But with that being said, let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. So with that, we have over 100 fire apparatus out of service. And having these apparatus in the proper amount of mechanics would have helped. And so it did absolutely negatively impact.
Yeah, so I see how this environment fosters the type of wild claims we've reviewed already because there's confusion and we're getting down into some pretty nitty-gritty budget stuff, and I'll show you what I mean. But as I said, I totally respect Kristen Crowley's, the LA fire chief's statement here. I mean, she's the one dealing with this. And also, so that we fully contextualize the conversation and not allow for what's happening in the right wing, which is taking these claims and taking them way farther than the truth allows, we do have to review a little bit more in detail what happened with this budget. It sounds like there were reductions in one part of the budget, but an overall increase in the budget because of increases at a different part of the budget. So she's referring to, and it sounds like this was really important stuff, so that's totally worthy of criticism toward LA leadership. But with there was a broader defunding effort, that just is not factual. And I don't think that's what she's alleging even, but just to address, like I said, some of those MAGA claims, as the LA Times points out, after perpetuating a misleading talking point before, they're now coming forward and clarifying. The city council approved the firefighter raise in November, adding more than $53 million in additional salary costs. By then, the council had also signed off on $58 million for new fire trucks and other department purchases. Once those two line items were added, the fire department's operating budget actually grew by more than 7% compared to the prior fiscal year, according to the city's financial analysts. So it's true that the budget increased. She's saying there was a budget cut. My assumption is that must be a certain area was cut. Maybe she's talking about equipment investment reductions. As I reviewed the budget for the segment we did before, it seemed like there were one-time purchases that then didn't need to be re-upped because they had already replenished those equipment, those items. But if she's saying, no, but we needed that money the next year and we didn't get it, even if that was then offset and then some in a different area, like salary, like for personnel, that still shouldn't have been reduced, then I hear her. And she's, as I said before, way more in the know on all of this than I'd be. But for some of the MAGA claims, there's a lot being put out there that's misleading about budget things. And sometimes, it really is difficult to weed through because this is a much less salacious or sexy conversation for people than the quick, easy tweet that makes a false claim about defunding of this, that, or the other thing. And it takes nuance and it takes hearing the criticisms and agreeing with many of them and then addressing the ones that are based on dishonest premises. And then you do have Gavin Newsom speaking to Meet the Press and addressing some of Trump's allegations.
President-elect Trump has blamed you for this crisis. He called you incompetent. What's your response?
Well, I called for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. We have a president of the United States that within 36 hours provided a major disaster declaration over a text. We had support from the president of the United States, Joe Biden, with 100% reimbursement, all the resources you could hope for or imagine, constant communication. I'd like to extend that to the president-elect. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full. The state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us. Responding to Donald Trump's insults, we would spend another month. I'm very familiar with them. Every elected official that he disagrees with, very familiar with them.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation, to understand what was happening with that local reservoir. That was not a state system reservoir, which the president-elect was referring to as it relates to the Delta and somehow connecting the Delta smelt to this fire, which is inexcusable because it's inaccurate, also incomprehensible to anyone that understands water policy in the state.
My understanding is that you have put a call into President-elect Trump. Has he called you back?
No, that was months ago. That was.
And from what I'm hearing, it looks like maybe Trump is now planning a trip there as Newsom is inviting him. So even with what you're hearing him say, you can see how for people who don't really care about keeping the focus where it should be, it's very easy to dive into claims from the LA chief that are of real concern, but then distort those, connect them with false claims that Newsom's trying to weed through here and create a whole politically charged narrative. When, as of now, as I've said, the response is the focus and making sure that people get the support that they need. And it sounds like Newsom is saying Biden has done what he can do, and then he's trying to do what he can do. But then I actually really do think that there's plenty of criticism to go around as more and more information comes out. What's unfortunate is when you learn that some of the people desperately looking for those details are doing so in bad faith and will just say anything. It feels strange to discuss that with them, but with good faith individuals, it sounds like we're going to hopefully see numerous investigations into what could have been done better and what shortcomings and failures took place. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that doesn't then justify anyone saying any particularly malicious and politically charged claim that's not based in fact. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.